All right, before we head out of here, last thing I want to talk about. Yesterday, locker clean out day. Last time we'll talk to the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room until OTAs. The locker room will look much different by then. Plenty of injuries, plenty of contract expirations, contract extensions. Might have been the last time we saw Mason Rudolph walking around in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room, as crazy as that sounds. We were both there, talked to, I don't know, a few people. I don't want to say it was a successful locker room clean out day. I've been to some really good ones. I've been to some really bad. I mean, I could still look back. I think the best one I've ever been to was the first one. And that's like, I could still picture Artie Burns shoving stuff into a garbage bag and somebody going up to him and him just being like, man, look, I'm not going to come back here. And, I wish him all the best, but this just didn't work out. Me being like, all right, sounds good. Thanks, pal.
Perfect.
I could still picture all that good stuff. I've had a Zach Banner interview that I literally just walked up to him and said, like, hey, like, what you got going on this offseason? And he said, take out your phone. And he just started talking. And I was like, all right, that's a great story. Thank you very much. There's been some really good ones yesterday. I would say it was but after the season the Pittsburgh Steelers went through, I don't think anybody really wanted to talk at that point. And to lose the night before, I don't think ever helps the situation. You were there, your first locker clean out day, I believe.
That's right.
What was your biggest takeaway? What were your big takeaways?
Well, it's just an interesting dynamic, It's like no one's supposed to be happy, everyone's still a little pissed off. But like it's kind of last day of school vibes, Like you want to say bye to your buds, you want to say bye to everyone before you leave. You're reminiscing, you're going through memories. Guys are like, Pat Pete's handing out jerseys, like to all his pals. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird mix of like, sadness, but also remembrance and some joy and some laughter and all that, which is just interesting to see. But I think my biggest takeaway was something that we talked about a little bit earlier. And it just felt like talking to guys, the Steelers really feel like they left something on the field up in Buffalo.
Yes.
Like, and for this entire season, really, I think they just felt like, man, we were much better than this, like we were, the sum of our parts didn't, wasn't better than what we all were individually, like that they just like weren't, that there was more to do, that they have like kind of some unfinished business, that they just felt like they didn't live up to their potential this season. And I think that's plain enough for anyone to see, but it's interesting to see guys kind of grapple with that in real time, and like admit that and be like, yeah, we didn't play as well as we could have. We didn't go as far as we could have. We feel like we left something out there. And that was, I think, my big, and that goes back to the Tomlin thing. It felt like the players really, that kind of weighed on them. It was the kind of falling short this season was something that they took personally, that they thought was kind of their fault. And that was just interesting to see, because we spend the entire regular season talking about really two people, and it was Kenny Pickett and Mike Tomlin, and all the rest of the players are like, yeah, we're here too. Like we are, we are a part of this too. We own all the successes and failures. And it wasn't just two guys. It was, 53 plus however many coaches. It just felt like that loss in this season kind of weighed on everyone in a big way.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a little bit all season of guys like really hammering home, like, look, we got to be on the field. But again, I said this earlier, none of those questions were ever like, oh, how disappointing was, like some of them were, how disappointing was the season? What are the emotions right now? A lot of those questions started with, Mike Tomlin, talking about Mike Tomlin, and guys would immediately just be like, look at we didn't play well. We didn't play well enough. We didn't put it all out there. We left so much at home. Injuries killed us. This was disappointing. We did this wrong. It was just so many guys trying to defend that, like, just like you said, it was them. Like it was bad play in big moments. And I mean, that was cool to see. It stinks to see, but at the same time, like, it shows that the Steelers locker room went through a lot of drama this year. It had a lot of negative headlines. It had a lot of distractions, and all of those things were justified. They were still as competitive as humanly possible, and somewhere along the way, and I don't know if it was the last 3 games, I couldn't tell you, somewhere something clicked where it was like, all right, this is all on us. We've done all this. We've done this to ourselves. Nobody else could take the blame. It is what it is, and we have to live with it. And I think that's a heartbreaker to see, but it's also at the same time, like, optimistic to see, because you got a bunch of guys that see the vision and realize that the vision isn't going to get handed to you. And in the NFL, I think a lot of guys think that the vision is handed to you, and that was changed. I did like how pretty much nobody had anything negative to say about anybody else, which was nice, or the team, or like you said, it was like the last day of school. Like it was like we did this together. You kind of saw the camaraderie of the Pittsburgh Steelers in that moment, which was cool, because again, at a lot of times this season, it kind of felt like everything was falling apart, and that guys had to go, and this attitude issue and this attitude issue, and to see it all come into a moment of, look, we're here and we believe we could do bigger things. That was cool, and I think people should be more optimistic about the future. Mine was yesterday was kind of put a cap on it. Deontay Johnson says after the game that he hopes Mason Rudolph returns in 2024 as the guy, gets the job. Jaylen Warren says yesterday that he expects Mason Rudolph to return and be the starter, and that he did what he needed to do. I don't know if Jaylen understands in the moment, or understood in the moment, that Mason's contract is up, because I wouldn't be paying attention to other people's contracts if I was in the midst of a season. Like, I wouldn't have a board up there and be like, oh, all these guys are leaving.
Right.
But for him to say, I expect him to be the guy, it just feels like the locker room wants Mason to be their starting quarterback. Like, if the season started today, and I get that that's a big if, they'd look at it and say, like, they would just all expect Mason to be QB1 heading into next season. I think now it comes down to the coaches, which we talked about a lot yesterday, of maybe Mike Tomlin needs to start listening to guys more. I think it comes down to the coaches erasing the first round draft stock and erasing the third round draft stock vet that didn't make it at first, and just saying, what quarterback gives us the best opportunity? Who cares about how it looks in the end? And, whether or not I'm capable of drafting a first round quarterback, and just look at it like, who gives us the best chance? And I think Mason Rudolph is that guy. And I think the locker room feels like, they're a bunch of guys. They're a group of guys. The locker room is a group of guys who do not care where you were drafted or how you got here. They just care about who's going to give us the best opportunity to win. I think if the coaching staff realizes that same thing, they'll listen, and Mason will be the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think quarterback is a position that's uniquely, that makes kind of your teammates' opinions of you pretty relevant, like more than like, who cares if an outside corner is a leader? Who cares if he has the respect in the locker room? Like, if you play well, you'll get that stuff. And quarterbacks a little bit like only to a certain extent like that. Like, you have to be charismatic and good with people, and able to navigate problems, and able to navigate, interpersonal disputes and relationships. And it seems like Mason's able to do that really well. Mason, I think, understands politics is kind of the only word that comes to mind, but kind of the human element of being a quarterback, at least by all accounts. And so in that vein, just like respect for the guy calling the plays and running the huddle is important. And Mason, you can talk all you want about what he done on the field, but at the very least, he's leading this team, and he's got their respect, and his voice carries a lot of weight in that locker room.
Yep, exactly. And there are a lot of decisions to go through. We'll talk about all of them throughout the offseason. But for right now, again, if you sat everybody down in that thing, and this is no disrespect to Kenny, I don't think anybody took it as a jab to Kenny or Mason's better than Kenny. I think it was strict tunnel vision, Mason Rudolph. And they just realize how good this kid is and how promising their future is if he is their quarterback, which I thought was a big thing, a big way to walk away.
Yeah, and just like, not everything needs to be about Kenny,
No. Sometimes it could just be about Mason Rudolph.
Right. Like, just because we're not talking about one guy doesn't mean we're saying something about him,
Yep.
Like, I think we need to let go of that a little bit. Like you said, like, erase the first round grade, erase the third round grade. Just like look at the actual NFL football players we're talking about. And I don't know. Kenny Pickett just does. Kenny Pickett, I felt like, has been a part of every conversation. Like, you literally cannot talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers without talking about Kenny Pickett. And I would like to be able to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers without talking about Kenny Pickett sometimes. I know he's part of he could be a part of their future. He's a part of their immediate future. But let's just, I don't know. I'm done with talking about Kenny Pickett, quite honestly.
Yeah, for right now, 100%, especially in the conversation of Mason Rudolph. Like,
Right.
If Mason Rudolph doesn't come back, then obviously we're having Kenny Pickett conversations. But for right now, let's just talk about Mason Rudolph. I agree, and I think the players felt the same way.